All right, let's dive right into a huge question. Is it always wrong to be selfish? We're going to explore a whole philosophy that says, actually no, and then see how that one idea, believe it or not, leads us to the fundamental rules that hold our entire society together. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been called selfish? Yeah, it's never a compliment, is it? But what if looking out for number one is not just something we do, but it's actually the right thing to do? What if it's the most moral way to live? And that idea has a name: egoism. It's a philosophy that puts self-interest front and center. But it's not quite as simple as just, do whatever you want. It actually comes in two very distinct flavors. Okay, so here are the two sides of the coin. And the big difference really boils down to two little words: is and ought. On the left, you've got psychological egoism. This is a claim about how things are. It says that deep down, everything we do, even stuff that looks super selfless, is actually driven by our own self-interest. Then, on the right, you have ethical egoism, which makes a much bigger, bolder claim. It says we ought to act in our own self-interest, that it's the truly moral path to take. And look, this isn't just some wacky, fringe idea. The famous economist Adam Smith basically argued that when everyone chases their own interests in a free market, it kind of magically creates the best result for society as a whole. And the philosopher Ayn Rand, she took it way further, straight up arguing that selfishness is a virtue and that your own happiness is your highest moral purpose. That's a powerful idea, right? That my self-interest could actually help everyone? But it also begs a pretty terrifying question. What happens if you take away all the rules? No laws, no government, nothing. What happens if everyone is just pursuing their own self-interest, completely unchecked? Well, to answer that, we need to go back to the 17th century and talk to a philosopher named Thomas Hobbes. He ran this amazing thought experiment where he imagined what he called a state of nature, basically the world before any societies or governments popped up. And his conclusion was, well, it was grim. He argued that without some power to keep us all in line, we would live in a constant state of war, a war of all against all. It would be a world filled with fear and danger, where life, in his iconic words, is nasty, brutish, and short. Yeah, not exactly a place you'd want to live. So, how do you escape that nightmare scenario? Hobbes' answer was an idea so powerful it basically shaped modern politics. He said, "We make a deal, and this deal is the foundation of what we now call the social contract." So the social contract is really just a simple trade-off. We all agree to give up some of our absolute freedom, the freedom to just take your neighbor's stuff if you're stronger. And in return, we get safety, we get order, we get security, all provided by a government and its laws. It's a contract we make out of pure self-interest, the interest in, well, not dying. Okay, so a contract for survival. That makes sense. But is that the best we can do? Is just having order and not living in constant fear enough? Or should we be aiming for something more? Something like a truly fair society? And that question brings us to a more recent philosopher, John Rawls. He looked at this whole social contract idea and decided to reboot it. He reimagined it, not just as a deal for survival, but as a method for designing a genuinely just and fair society for every single person.
Rawls starts by asking this absolutely brilliant question. Imagine for a second, you get to design the basic rules of a brand new society. The catch? You have to live in it, but you have absolutely no idea who you're going to be. You don't know if you'll be rich or poor, male or female, talented or not so talented. What kind of rules would you make then?
This incredible thought experiment is the core of his whole philosophy, and it has a fantastic name: the veil of ignorance. It's a tool designed to force us to be impartial by stripping away all of our personal biases. So here's how it works. First, you imagine stepping behind this veil. And the moment you do, poof, you forget everything about who you are. Your wealth, your race, your gender, your skills. You don't even know if you're the kind of person who likes knitting or cage fighting. From this totally neutral original position, you and everyone else have to agree on the basic principles for this new society. And that's the genius of it, right? Because you don't know where you're going to land, your own self-interest forces you to be fair to everyone. You're not going to make rules that oppress a certain group because, hey, you might end up in that group. You're going to want to make sure there's a safety net for the poor, just in case that's you. So what would we choose? Rawls argued we'd all agree on a few key things. First, everybody gets the most freedom possible, as long as it doesn't mess with anyone else's freedom. Second,
everyone gets a fair and equal shot at success. And third, and this is the really wild part, he says we'd agree that inequalities are only okay if they end up helping the people at the very bottom. So, a doctor earning a huge salary? That's only fair if it means better healthcare for everyone, including the poorest person in society.
So think about that. We started this whole journey with egoism, the idea that it's good to look out for number one. And we followed that logic all the way to a thought experiment designed to build a truly fair society by making us consider the needs of every single person. And that brings us to the final question for you. If you were to step behind that veil, with all your personal biases and advantages wiped away, what kind of world would you build?